One of the weirdest and most unconventional shonen is coming out here in 2022 with an anime, and that series is Chainsaw Man. If you haven't heard of Chainsaw Man, then I'm actually not that surprised. It's one of those series that is equally one of the most overrated and most underrated series at the same time. Overrated because its cult fan base thinks it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and underrated because a lot of people haven't been talking about Chainsaw Man as the anime is almost here. And it's not like Chainsaw Man is bad or anything, it's just very different from any other shonen you'll check out. You can't call a series bad or not popular if it's popular enough to get an anime and a sequel to the main story. So there's definitely something in there for Chainsaw Man. But I'm not about to goo goo gaga all over this series here. You know what I'm here to do? I'm here to objectively analyze Chainsaw Man as a whole, as a manga, and give you a proper rating, give you a proper analysis on how good this series truly is. So if you enjoy videos like this, as always, smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss a video going on in the future. So with that said, let's roll right into some of these criteria. First things first is the plot, and I don't think I need to say this, but I guess it doesn't hurt for those people watching the video, is yes, there will be manga spoilers in this video, so you have been warned. Now with that said, Chainsaw Man, again, a disturbing wild ride of a shonen. It does not fit any aspect of what a shonen is supposed to be. An adventure series made for young men, usually under the age of 18, but even you could say like early 20s at the bare maximum is what the demographic is supposed to be. Well, Chainsaw Man does not care. It's doing whatever it wants and still being classified as a shonen. As it starts out with our main character named Denji, one of the biggest losers that you'll ever see as a main character. He kind of sucks at everything. He's poor, he's kind of a degenerate, and he's doing whatever he can to survive in life. Well, one of the first things we see in this series, he gets with the wrong crowd and gets cut up into pieces. Now obviously our main character is not going to die in the first chapter, so we find out that he eventually gets powers. He becomes a devil with a chainsaw for a head, cuts up people in a bloody massacre, and that is where our story starts. Now you may be thinking, okay, what is the premise? What is our main character going to do for the rest of the story? Well, let me tell you, he doesn't have a goal that is as generic as becoming the hero king or becoming the Hokage pirate. He's not going to do any of that. No, his goal, his main goal for basically the entire series is to fuck Makima, this woman right here. He meets this woman, becomes a simp, and wants to, you know what, all day long. And that is basically his goal as he joins a devil organization he knows nothing about. He knows nothing about the real world, and anytime Makima says sit, he starts barking. That is basically his entire story arc. Him reaching her and those mountaintops. Now of course it's not as simple as that. As we learn more about Makima, as we learn more about the devils and how this organization works and all the different characters he meets along the way, the twists and turns, the betrayals, the character development, it's all there in the typical manga fashion in terms of storytelling. But I will say a lot of it is not truly drawn out to its fullest capacity. The story itself meets a lot of characters that get introduced but never really expanded upon. The twists and turns are there, but nothing surprising enough to make you say this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. The plot is interesting enough to keep you enthralled with the entire story as you follow Denji, who's basically a loser with the OP power, trying to find out who he is the entire story and find out where he belongs in this crazy world. It is very unconventional in the character type, in the world, and in his goal. But with that said, the overall plot is a solid 6 out of 10. It'll keep you interested, but it's not a masterpiece in terms of writing by any means. Next, of course, let's dive into those very characters that are probably one of the catalysts of the series. Because we obviously got our loser man, Denji, who is relatable to a lot of people, considering he has no talent and he has no actual goal. He just wants to enjoy the finer things in life because he had nothing his entire life. You can understand how that may be if you were under a similar circumstance and situations. Now, we do have other characters that have more goals, like Makima and Aki. Aki being the deuteragonist who has a goal, who has a revenge story, typical rival deuteragonist situations. But unfortunately, his story definitely takes a huge turn to the worst, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You got other characters who have their own identity and goals, and these are things that is a highlight of Chainsaw Man, as there are a slew of characters, but they just don't get flushed out or drawn out enough throughout the entirety of the story. We know what their story is, but a lot of them get a very non-climactic end to their whole story arc. With that said, one of the biggest highlights in many people's eyes is the character, the female lead known as Power. She is very different from the rest of the cast. It's almost like she doesn't belong, but her presence in the story really gets people interested, me included. Of course, she's a cute, very uniquely designed character, but what makes her different is she's a devil, first introduction, and it's all about her story and her relationship with Denji as it evolves. Now, it's not really romance, it's more of love in a more familial sense. It's a devil basically becoming human the entire story to a guy who's basically a loser who can't do anything right, who's simping over another woman. But Power doesn't care, Power doesn't mind. At some point, she just wants to be there with the person she cares about the most. Like I said, it's more of a sister-brother relationship at the end of the day, to the point where it hit a climactic point at the end of the series that I won't spoil for you, but it does involve Power and Denji. And one of the hugest draws in the stories and one of the biggest credits I give to Chainsaw Man. A lot of people are going to love Power when the anime officially comes out, I guarantee it. So the characters, for the most part, although they're not done completely perfectly, there are a lot of unique characters that will stand out for a moment in time throughout the story. We got the key cast that I just told you about. Of course, Makima being the biggest one and having the biggest twist to her personality. In general, she's the most important character who has the most sympathy in the entire story. If I dive into it anymore, I'll be spoiling basically the entire plot of Chainsaw Man, so I'm not going to. But just keep in mind, watch this woman right here. You may love her, you might hate her, there's really no in between. So with that said, I give the characters a solid 8 out of 10. Next is world building / power system. Now, even though this is a battle type of violent type of series, there's really no power system to talk about. Sure, at first it had some abilities with curses in here and there, but for the most part, those really don't matter. It really talks about the power of the devils and how they counteract each other. So it's more normal battle stuff. It's not a complex power system. It's basically just strategic strategies in battle, pretty standard stuff. Now, the lore, the world of the Chainsaw Man devils are the most interesting part of this story, bar none. To the point we learn more about Hell, which is where these devils come from, the dynamic there, and how complex that entire system is, and how that is related to not only Denji, but Makima as well. And of course, the whole lore about how devils are made. The mangaka of Chainsaw Man definitely cared about the lore of devils and how they're brought up. And it's probably going to get expanded upon even more so in the sequel. So this is something also I give very much credit to Chainsaw Man, as you get enthralled into the devils and the devil world of Chainsaw Man. So with that said, I'll give it world building and power system a 7 out of 10. Themes. We know themes are important, and it's something that we need to talk about, because this is how this story will connect to you, and this is how the story will connect to everybody else who reads it. And if I'm talking about the critical themes of Chainsaw Man, they're relatively non-existent. It has the standard ones, of course, but the only thing I want to talk to you about, of course, when it comes to Chainsaw Man is what it means to have nothing and trying to find yourself when you do have nothing. This is probably the most important thing that Denji doesn't really teach you, because his story is not really that complex, But you could definitely notice that Denji, a person who had nothing, who was a loser given everything, and trying to find out his path in the world, can be something we all relate to at some level. I don't know if it'll motivate you necessarily, but it makes you appreciate the finer things in life, like living, like breathing, like family, and like love. Some things that a lot of people take for granted. So for the most part, I give the themes a 5 out of 10. It does its job, and it's something you can get out of it even a little bit as you read the story. And last but certainly not least, the art / animation. Obviously the animation is very few. We only saw a trailer for the most part, and it looks pretty decent from what I've seen. But the art itself is one of the biggest draws of Chainsaw Man because, like I said, it's a weird and unconventional story. It is completely carried by the massive gore and sexual appeal that Chainsaw Man has. If we're talking about a series where people are cut into pieces, a series where guts are brought out and blood is splattered, where devils and humans die consistently, where we have people vomiting in other people's mouths and potentially having SCX, then yes, that is Chainsaw Man. There is even like a cover page where we basically saw an orgy. Like, this is a shonen, and all that huge shock appeal is one of the biggest carriers of Chainsaw Man and why it got so popular in the first place. We see a shonen like this having this in addition to all the other elements. It's like, bro, what is this series? I gotta check it out. It's so weird, it's so unconventional. It's one of its biggest draws, and the art is actually really good, especially when it gets into its jam-packed action. So with that said, those are my 5 ratings. If we have to give an overall rating of Chainsaw Man, that will be to 6.8 out of 10. Not bad by any means, pretty good for what the series is. Like I said time and time again, it's carried by certain things that just makes it very different from most shonen you will see. Is interesting elements of the story that keeps the draw when it comes to the writing, but they're not crisp and they are not fine-tuned. The shock value of Chainsaw Man is definitely there, and of course the cult fan base really loves Chainsaw Man as a whole. So this rating shouldn't be surprising to you by any means in terms of its objective rating. I'm not saying it's bad, I am saying it's good, because anything above a 5 is better than average, and the fan base is definitely there considering it's getting its sequel, it's getting its anime, and I'll be checking out both at some point in my lifetime. So let me know what you guys think about Chainsaw Man in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoy the video. As always, like and subscribe. Take care.